several years ago, and it's more on the tune of about 6 years ago, we were able to work with Homeland Security and get what is called a 287G program. And that program allowed us to train 5 deputy sheriffs at the training facility in Charleston, where Homeland Security sends their immigration agents. And we sent 5 deputies that were trained at the academy in Charleston. They graduated. We brought them back to Beaufort County. We brought in the technology, which is their computer software, where we had what we call the ident system, which gave us the ability to go in and do the appropriate fingerprinting and face recognition, where we could identify people and determine whether, you know, 1, are you here illegally? 2, have you been convicted of a crime? Are you somebody that we need to look at closely? In doing so, the 5 deputies worked extremely hard. The 287G program that we had, which was a task force, allowed us to go out in the field in Beaufort County and work cases that are dealing with just the fact that you're here illegally, or you were a gang member, or you were involved in drug distribution, or you were a felon and you were in this country and you were hiding under an alias. So all of those things we were able to do. Now, we did that effectively for several years. The new administration, of course, that we're currently under, when it became apparent that that was not something that was on their list of to-dos, started looking at the 287G programs throughout the country and started downsizing those programs. Well, one of the ones, because we were a task force, not a jail program, and because we were acting in the same capacity as Homeland Security ICE agents, they took the program from us. We had a lot of conversation, or I had a lot of conversation with Homeland Security Director in Washington, and we couldn't make things change. And I finally asked her, so, well, what are you basing this removal or this program on? She said, it's a budget cut. I said, a budget cut? I said, well, your budget doesn't support the program in Beaufort County, so how can you claim it's a budget cut when Beaufort County citizens are the ones paying for this program in Beaufort County, South Carolina? And it was very obvious at that point that this was the change that was going to be. It was what it was. There was no turning back, and there was no, there was no give on this. This was just the way it was going to be.
I feel like the county and the state has done a pretty good job of being proactive. Ultimately, we're not going to have a coherent and effective immigration policy and a secure border unless the federal government appropriates the resources and charges its agents to actually execute the laws. And that's something we haven't seen. And it's something that I think raises some real concerns in a constitutional republic where you have 3 branches and everybody has their job. I mean, the Congress, the House and the Senate, they pass bills. The President is to faithfully execute those laws. I mean, it's not a discretionary thing. He raises his right hand and takes the oath and swears to faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America. And I think in many instances, that frankly hasn't been done. Not for budgetary reasons, as the excuse was given to P.J., but for policy reasons. And I think let's just call a spade or an ace an ace. I think that this administration is okay with illegal immigration. This administration has been incredibly creative, quote unquote, with ameliorating the cumbersome aspects of the Affordable Care Act and on the fly legislating and behaving in a way that, it quite frankly, amazes me that as many American people tolerate it as they do. And I talk to my liberal friends, and I do have some liberal friends. I say, how can you countenance this? How can you stand by and see the President of the United States of America selectively enforcing laws, or through executive order modifying terms of laws? I mean, and they're so defensive and reactionary and say, well, George Bush was even worse, or you guys started this. And it's just sort of like, you can never even have a rational conversation anymore about something as sterile and abstract as separation of powers. And that's a real shame. The Tea Parties are not to blame for calling attention to this fact. You would be blamed if you sat back and took it. You could be blamed if you just sat back and did nothing about it and shrugged your shoulders. Which I think is what a lot of the media would like to have you do. And certainly I think the administration would like to have you do. So, whenever I'm accused or we're accused being rabble-rousers, remember, it's always the passive citizenry that gives way to tyranny. And so keep up what you're doing, do it with pride, and I think history is on our side, right is on our side, and eventually that will come out.